to our next speaker for today. Next up, we have Rhys Davies, who is General Manager of X Online, which is part of QGE Australia. Rhys is an electrical engineer with 15 years of experience. He has worked on numerous major greenfield tank farm projects for clients such as BP and Puma Energy. Thank you.
Thanks, Margaret. Hello, and thank you all for tuning in and listening to me this evening or morning, depending on the time zone you guys are in. I'm dialing in from Australia, so it's evening here. I'll promise to keep this succinct, given it's already encroaching on my bedtime. As Margaret said, I'm an electrical engineer of over 15 years experience in hazardous areas. That's in classification, design and inspection. Currently general manager for EX Online, which is part of the part of the QGE group, and representing QGE and Mondial, who are partners in Europe. So QGE group, an engineering consultant, specialising in hazardous areas. For those not familiar with the term, we're basically talking about explosive atmospheres, be that gases, vapours or dusts. We specialise in hazardous areas, electrical engineering and control system engineering. In-house, we have over 150 years combined in experience in hazardous areas, classification and design, and feel we have a lot to offer in that space. So as you can see, I'm presenting today on data-driven optimised management of electrical equipment in hazardous areas. Bit of a mouthful, that one. So what do we actually mean by that? We're talking about EEHA, or electrical equipment in hazardous areas. You guys in Europe would probably be more familiar with the term ATEX inspections and why we do them. How the industry has historically completed inspections, the problems with the historical methods of completing the inspections, the use of technology going forward, and data to do inspections better, benefits of doing them using these better tools, and what options we've got going into the future. So yeah, inspections, what and why? What we're talking about here is inspections of electrical equipment, be that detailed, close or visual in nature, within a hazardous area. They're generally completed at regular intervals to ensure the integrity of the protection method of the equipment that's used and that it remains intact. And why do we do them? Well, first and foremost, we do them to ensure that our installations are safe to operate. And secondly, generally because we're obliged to complete them by the standards, namely that standard being IEC 60079, Part 14 and 15. You'll find there are some regional adaptations, largely the same. You'll even find that largely they have the same number, if not just with a different, what do you call it, postnomial there, or prenomial. So historically, inspections, a bit cumbersome. They're done every 4 years, as I mentioned. Typically, that's due to the standards requirements, and actually you'll have to excuse me on the 4 years. That's Australian is 4 years. Typically, IEC IEC refers to 3. Your inspector will grab an equipment list and a large pack of blank worksheets, put them in a folder, walk out onto the site and start inspecting equipment. He typically won't have with him any historical design information, certification information, or any previous inspection records. Just impractical to do so given the weight of paper that he's got to carry around. So they'll head into the plant, inspect all the equipment that they see as they see it on site at the time. They'll pick up the defects that they see, and it'll generally mean that your obligations to complete the inspections are met. The outputs of the inspections then need a lot of processing. It's not uncommon to start an inspection campaign with around 1,000 pieces of equipment. It's pretty small, in fact, in a lot of the cases that we see, especially with a terminal. But assuming 1,000, so 1,000 check sheets go out into the field with inspectors. That 1,000 check sheets then come back after completion and require processing. Typically, that's a manual process as well. Tedious and monotonous work for whoever's doing that, and a lot of human error can creep into that process. Can be amplified by the fact that to get through 1,000 pieces of equipment, you'll typically find you have more than one inspector, and on some occasions over time you'll have multiple companies inspecting, and that will lead to different ways that they record the information that they're collecting in the field. And depending on the type or the quality of the inspector you get, you also might find you receive back comments on defective equipment that will read something like damaged or a random expletive used. It's not uncommon. Unfortunately, that doesn't really give you an awful lot of insight into what's gone wrong or what the defect really is. There's also, with no design history associated and going into the field, there's nothing for your inspector to look at to cross-check against when he's completing his check sheets. So this can lead to a long list of follow-up actions or defect records that could have otherwise been avoided had he had a bit more information available to him in the field. It's worth noting as well that during detailed inspections, there's always a potential for an inspection-induced failure, which basically means in opening panels or bits of electrical equipment, your inspector will create the defect he was actually out there in the first place to look for. End result, obviously a long list of actions, several pages to work through before you actually even get to the rectification process. So if you're looking at a KPI scorecard for what you might hope to achieve from an inspection campaign, safe installation, yes, maybe. The inspector's got to make a large number of assumptions, given that he's not taking the design information into the field. When he comes back, follow-up items, as I mentioned before. So you're probably safe, but you're certainly not at a place that I would consider ALARP. Are you compliant? Well, yep, assuming your inspections are completed, you've met your obligations under the standard. Do you have a quick process to defect rectification? As I mentioned, 1,000 check sheets manually processed into a system prior to even starting to assign the defect rectification process. It's not exactly efficient, definitely not quick. Reliable data, you definitely have some. Over time, it tends to disappear because of the paper-based processes, and also, like I mentioned, you do have human error creeping quite often, so it's unlikely it's particularly reliable. Certainly seen over time a lack of confidence in the data collected. As you might guess, all of this is suggesting that we don't really have a particularly cost-effective maintenance system off the back end of this style of inspection. So the good news, and the quiet plug for my part of this presentation, that there are tools available now out there in the market that can help with this process. We're hitting that digitalization space that everyone likes to hear about at the moment as well. So we have a product called EX Online, which is a cloud-based system for managing hazardous area compliance and documentation. Combine that with a tablet app for completing the inspections, and that allows, as I mentioned before, the shortcomings of historical inspections being we can't take data into the field. Now we can make better, more informed decisions while we're out there. We like to say that EX Online makes the process far more effective, and that's primarily because we're not just making the process more efficient, we're not just speeding things up, we're increasing the quality of output that you get and reducing the time that it takes to get there. So the effective data-driven inspection, a lot of buzzwords there, but that's it. Historical data is now available to the inspector in the field. Inspector can make better on-the-spot decisions, such as, is this device correctly certified? Are the special conditions of design or manufacturing requirements met? And are any design calculations complete and accurate? In short, is the defect I'm about to report or record actually a defect? Digitising this process gives you quick wins, faster inspection campaigns, higher quality of data collected, less defects and follow-up actions required or recorded, quicker path to rectification, better levels of compliance, less resources spent on the administrative processing activities of setting up a campaign and then the follow-up. For anyone watching and thinking, why have we got mangoes? Like I mentioned before, I'm sitting in Australia, in Queensland, and Queensland mangoes are our low-hanging fruit. So let's go back to the KPI scorecard we mentioned before. You can see we're hitting on much better, hitting our objectives. Yep, we can say we've got a safe installation because now we can check the design and the intent of the installation. We can far more confidently say we're compliant for the same reasons. But in addition to those things, because the data is available immediately once you return to your central hub and can upload the data to your cloud, and your equipment dossier is available immediately with defect lists and actions. There's no more waiting a week for the manual import process. Is the data reliable? Well, yes. You have consistent ways of reporting, regardless of how many inspectors you've got, how many backgrounds, or how many companies they're split across, and that's all straight into the database. Is this a cost-effective way? Well, we've minimised the setup time, minimised the follow-up activities, and improved the inspection quality. So we feel we're now at a point where we're offering a much more cost-effective maintenance system option. So this is the bit that I'm probably a bit more excited about, to be honest, and that's the bigger opportunities that come with collecting data. With periodic inspection cycles currently being the 3 years that are specified in the standards, we think they're probably a bit conservative in a lot of occasions. It's a number picked on low levels of risk data available to us historically, and it's definitely most likely not the most effective way to achieve safety nor compliance. Using a blanket inspection frequency means that we're spreading our resources very thinly over our operations instead of being able to allocate them to tasks and things that matter, like true maintenance activities, and as well as safety and operational improvement initiatives. So just for, I guess, to quote it out, the standard reads that the interval between periodic inspections shall not exceed 3 years without an assessment including relevant information. So the basis for changing the inspection period shall be documented. So in the past, there's been some nervousness about being able to suitably document any decisions made to reduce that inspection period because of the quality of data that we've been collecting in the past, especially historical and over time. But we can use a risk-based inspection method to determine our inspection timeframes, and this is likely to reduce the frequency requirements, and that in turn helping us hit our key metrics, safety, compliance, and compliance, but for a much lower cost. And in addition, we can reduce the likelihood or the opportunity for inspection-induced failures that we mentioned before. So RBI, or based inspection methodology is a targeted approach, as I mentioned. It's documented in the standards. Your risks can be assessed using qualitative approaches, such as using your area classification combined with your equipment protection type, equipment age, environmental severity, and defect history that we now can track over time. Once these risks are assessed, we have the documentation backed by historical inspection data required of us by the standard, and it allows us to keep that document trail and justify the inspection time reduction and deploy resources more effectively. You can see here a little diagram straight from the standard here, and it highlights the point where our historical sticking point for RBI has always been in that equipment register and records. So it's always been the lack of confidence in those records over a prolonged period of time that has prevented the opportunity really to use a RBI style methodology. But the new tools that we've got out there now can give you that historical record and confidence in the level of data that you've got. So to sum it up, the historical methods of completing inspections are slow, costly, don't achieve what we want them to achieve, don't get a pass mark even. The tools are available, such as EX Online, now available to allow us to travel that digitalization path that everybody wants to travel down. Those tools are immediately able to save us time and money in inspection activities. Utilizing those tools not only saves us the time and money, but gives us a better assessment coming out of the field and gives us better quality of data as an output. That good data used with an RBI methodology gives us the opportunity to be more effective. Again, that word effective, with our management of our EHA installations and maintenance. And that in turn should lead us to a position where we're safer for less money while still being compliant. So as I said, short and sweet, hopefully. And here's some contact details for you. Anybody that wants to get in touch, feel free to screenshot that and get in touch with either myself or Ken from Mondial, and we can talk some more about digitalization of hazardous area inspections.
Thank you, Rhys. I've just muted you just while I'm speaking, just to try and improve the sound quality a little bit. Really interesting presentation. We've got time for a couple of questions. So Marcus Webster asks, does X Online need a live internet connection to the cloud server for the inspector in the field?
Nope. Cloud server is used as a database, but the inspector in the field takes a work pack out with him in the tablet. No internet connection required. It's all stored locally on the tablet. Once you've finished your inspection, you come back into your main office building, wherever you've got the internet connection, and upload back into the cloud server from there. Okay, very easy process.
Okay, next one is, what is a typical implementation timeline for X Online?
That's a good question. Obviously, I'm going to almost parrot fashion copy the previous presenter, but it depends on the size of your installation. Just some recent ones. It does depend somewhat on the quality of the historical data. You know, we can have some really terrible quality data coming in, and if there's little of it, then it's little to set up. But we can also get terrible quality and a lot of it, and that takes a lot more time to process to get in. But say an average site that I've seen of about 1,000 tags takes us a couple of days, maybe a week, to get all the data processed into a system ready to take out in the field and start your next inspection campaign.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, excellent. Well, that's all we've got time for. As I mentioned, there are a couple more questions that we will ask you afterwards and publish those responses for everyone. So thank you very much.